Calling to order the regular meeting of the Hubbardston Planning Board. It is 6:31. Planning board meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually through Teams pursuant to Section 20 of the Acts of 2021, allowing public meetings to be conducted remotely so that board and committee members as well as members of the public can participate remotely. Recognizing that we do have a quorum present in the room with Mr. Holman, Mr. Demalia, Mr. Carpenter, and myself. I did receive regrets from Mr. Steiger before the meeting that he was not going to be able to make it, and he's not joining online, just to double check.
Nope, he had noted that he was at a different meeting.
Okay, so we'll be able to do regular votes and not have to do roll call votes. Moving forward on the agenda, we have public comments. Is anybody here to comment on anything that is not on the agenda? All right, hearing none, let's move forward into acceptance of the minutes from the previous meeting. The minutes have been made available to the planning board through the drive and through the packet that's been made available for them tonight. Our usual process is to go forward with a motion and a second and then handle amendments through friendly amendment. Do we have a motion? And do we have a second?
I will second.
So hearing a first and a second, any corrections through friendly amendment?
Two minor spelling issues with niche. I believe.
Where are you looking at?
At least Leanne can sort of spell it. I can't even say it.
For D,
Yeah, shouldn't it have an E at the end of it?
No.
No. Oh,
It
no.
does have too many consonants, but not enough vowels, so I can see the errors.
4D and 7A.
So 4D and 7A.
Just misspellings, nothing substantive.
Okay.
No?
So friendly amendment on having those corrected. All right, so any other corrections to the minutes? Nope. All right, calling for a vote.
Holman's aye. Demalia, aye.
Carpenter, aye.
And the chair is aye. The minutes are accepted. Going forward on the agenda, we have the planners report. Alec, do you have anything for a planners report tonight?
Nothing new to report.
Excellent. All right. I know the agenda says presentation and then A&R, but I would actually like to take that in opposing order, assuming you don't want to sit around for probably what will be a 40 to 50 minute working session. So I assume you're here for the A&R?
Yep.
So can you both identify yourself for the record?
Trevor Fletcher with Graz Engineering. I'm Anthony Tavano. I'm the son of the applicant.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit about what you're here and asking for?
Yeah, I got the plan right here. The Mylar. This side.
And while you're grabbing that, Alec, have you had a chance to review the plans and the application on this?
Yes, I have done so, and earlier today, I believe it was, we received the tax verification that the property owner is in compliance with your tax bylaw as well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have more questions for you. All right, so tell us about,
Yeah, sure.
All right,
tell us about
so
what you're doing here.
on the right-hand side, you can kind of see the full extent of the lot. So this is a lot that they had just built on Lombard Road. It's 20 Lombard Road, and it was the remnants of an old subdivision that was done back in the 60s, and they kind of just divided it up into 6 lots. And the 2 lots that the applicant and her son acquired were right next to each other. You can see the lot on the left is Anthony Tavano, that's who's sitting right here, and then Joanne is his mother. And so that lot goes all the way up to Tohoto Road as of right now. So it had frontage on both Lombard and Tohoto Road. And then on the bigger portion of the plat, you can see that it also, Anthony's lot goes up Brookside Drive and also has frontage on Bigford Pond Road. It's all wetlands, but the frontage is there on that. So the intent of this is just to take all the frontage on this side of the two lots and put them together into one building lot that has access. On the original plan, it showed that was all wetlands, but we actually went out there and inspected it. It has a good access straight across. I don't know if it was built when they were intending on doing the full subdivision or something like that, but it's a good path to get right around to the backside of the wetlands, and there's a nice flat area to develop over there. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing, is just taking all the frontage on this side and some of the area in the back of these two lots and creating a new lot with adequate frontage and area, and then the two lots that it is created from will have adequate area and frontage still on Lombard Road. If anybody has any questions, I can clarify.
All right, any questions from the board for the applicant?
No.
All right,
I'd like to find out how much of the lot is wetland.
I believe right here in the notes, I believe I go through that. So the remaining lot 12, lot 5, which is going to be the lot on the side. I'm looking at it upside down. The lot on the left. So this lot over here that has 11.7 acres remaining of upland area, 2.5 acres of wetland area. The other remnant parcel has 7.5, that's supposed to be acres of upland and only half an acre of wetland. And the proposed lot 1 has 3.6, that's the proposed lot we're talking about, 3.6 acres of upland and 2.9 acres of wetland.
That's what my eyeball suggested. Have you had any interactions with the Conservation Commission?
Not yet. We haven't had any buildable building plans or anything like that. We haven't even done soil testing yet, so this is just the first step of that process. But with that, the access coming off Lombard Road, there is wetlands on both sides of that, so we will be in the 100-foot buffer on that, so we will have to go to the Conservation with an NOI.
I just wonder if obviously we have the authority to create the lot, but it doesn't mean that it's a buildable lot.
Correct. Yep.
So I just wonder if you and your client want to go and get the Conservation Commission's okay or input before you lock this up and record it and so forth.
Well, yeah, this is typically the first process, portion of the process. The note down here basically just says that your endorsement of this does not mean it's buildable, so it's on the applicant's liability. If it's not buildable, then they just wasted their money and time to do so. But we would like the endorsement now to move ahead, so that if they want to sell the lot, they could, and then whoever buys the lot, the onus is on them to determine if it's buildable. So that's kind of the way we're going.
So there's consideration that this is going to be sold, not kept in the family?
Correct, yeah.
Oh.
wait.
Yeah, it's intent to be built on back here. So they already have their house in the front, and this portion is going to be a buildable area over here.
Okay. My next question is the frontage again. Could you explain where's the 200 feet or?
Correct, yeah. So this entire portion of Tohoto Road
Yeah.
is 218 feet.
Okay.
Actually, that's there to there. And then this arc right here is also continuous frontage, and that's an additional 67.87. So
Yeah.
you're talking about, you have roughly 285 feet of frontage right there, which
Right.
the requirement, I believe, is 200 in the district.
Right.
So that's plenty there. And then in addition, it has all this frontage over here, which isn't usable, but it is frontage nonetheless. So it has plenty of frontage.
I haven't been out there. What's the condition of Tohoto Road?
It's a
Public way?
It's a public way.
Like a paper street?
It's
Paper
a little
street?
odd because the way the right of way works, it kind of comes down like this and comes out. So this portion right here is like it cuts onto the owner's property over here. So like right here and here is not really well defined, but this whole road section is built right where it's supposed to be, and then it continues around. Just this corner is a little funky around Brookside Drive into Tohoto, but yeah, it's paved. It's an adequate road. It's not too run down, but it's just a little finicky. It's just a little finicky the way it's built.
They were supposed to enlarge that when they first started, and then everything died out, and they never finished, so.
Yeah. And then, just so like everyone's aware, I know last time they went through the A&R, they showed all the old right-of-ways that were shown on the 1960s plan that went through all the lot. We did some and the planning board was kind of confused as to what rights those still had, because some of these lots over here were sold on that subdivision plat, so typically they have rights over all those roads that were shown in the subdivision plan. We did a little bit of research on that, and there was a certificate of no appeals done back in the 60s when it was done, and in that certificate of no appeals, it referenced a section of the subdivision plan that was approved, and it was limited to that section. So that line is actually shown as like the little hash line called section 1 line coming across. So anything from there to the north was actually approved, and that's what those abutters would have rights over the right of way. And then anything beyond it was not approved by the planning board at that time. So anything shown on the original subdivision plan at that time is null and void. So that was just a point of confusion last time it was brought up, so I figured I'd mention it now.
So again, your client's aware of the fact that any approval here doesn't
Yep.
mean the Board of Health or
Yep.
Conservation Commission are going to approve. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Additional questions from the board?
Nope.
All right, Alec, you mentioned that you reviewed the application. Is the application complete in your opinion?
Yes, I reviewed for all 12 points required under your A&R approval. The plan in its entirety complies with the requirements. The lot as proposed does comply with the zoning bylaw, subject to, of course, the placement of a home to be shown on future plans and presumably via building permit. Best of luck to the applicant and owner on the wetlands. I think that's going to be your trickiest thing on site, but that's not the jurisdiction of the planning board. And otherwise, Chris, I will note for the planning board, item number 12 in your A&R approval does require reference to location and area of wetlands, either through having those surveyed or attesting to the upland being provided. But notably, your zoning bylaw doesn't have a minimum upland area requirement except for any specific permit type. So I did find that a little odd. Ultimately, it's not pertinent to tonight. The applicant's engineer did provide you the upland and wetland calc, so you are covered in either regard. I would recommend approval at this time.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the planner from the board?
Nope, I'm all set.
All right, any additional comments from the applicant? All right, well, would somebody like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we accept.
All
I'll
right,
second that.
here in a first and a second, any additional discussion? All right, calling a vote,
Holman's eye.
Demalia, aye.
Carpenter, aye.
and the chair is aye. So the A&R is accepted.
Some paper copies.
So say, do we have a Sharpie?
We got one. The last thing I need is more paper.
Oh,
Don't forget the Mylar, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's an old one. Just enter it.
Oh, wood. Okay. That was my question. I was
Oh,
gonna actually
well, we
not
can
bad
set what they're doing
yourself.
in the bylaw.
Good. Yeah, I was wondering about that because I was just like it was I was the only sandpit around there that wasn't covered.
Do you happen to have a Sharpie?
I don't.
I will run upstairs, but no, might want to stick around for that.
Yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit.
Yeah, well, let's, we'll come back to that in some minute.
All right.
But,
Well, if you wanted to sign the paper, do you have to sign the paper copies? All
no.
of them? No?
We
Okay.
just have to sign the Mylar.
just come on around.
Some towns do all of them. It's a little over redundant, I think, but.
Yeah.
Do you want me to take this? Sure.
All right, so,
Yeah.
To follow, before we close on this, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to follow up on what Alex said. I think we may want to consider looking carefully at what he noted as a sort of an oversight in our requirements for upland in the zoning bylaws. In fact, the way it's written now, it says you can't have more than 40,000 square feet of wetland,
yeah.
which of course wouldn't apply in this case because it's such a huge lot. It makes no sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually,
Thank you, guys. Have a good rest of your night.
Take care.
and this is where it tribal knowledge, whatever. There's another version of that too that has a 13th item on it. I don't know if the 13th, and maybe Bill, you know, because you've been around longer. I don't know if the version with the 13 items was ever actually voted on or accepted as policy, or whether that was just something that Bill Murray used to use when he looked at them.
The checklist,
Yeah.
I don't recall if it was voted on or not.
Yeah, because the 12 items is in our subdivision control rules.
That's probably what the last approved one.
Yeah, and that has 12, whereas the one that Mr. Murray used to use had 13.
Right.
So,
The other big comment I'd like to make also is, like you said, the Conservation Commission has to review any knowledge before it can even
Oh,
go
yeah.
forward. So that's,
Yeah, I mean, it's just procedurally, it's
right, no, it makes sense.
buyer beware, if somebody's gonna buy a lot
Yeah.
like that and not know.
all right, so where's the Mylar at?
I just think it's at the bottom of that pile.
Do we want to all sign, or does somebody want to make a motion for me to just sign on behalf of the planning board?
Oh, I'm good with that.
Alec, we can do that, right?
Sure.
Which option can you do?
For an A&R, can we just have a motion and a vote for me to sign on behalf of the planning board?
Yes, and if the registry of deeds has any question, we can issue a letter after the fact certifying the vote.
All right.
Or we can say neutral.
I will make a motion that we let the chair sign for the planning board.
Hearing a first, do we have a second?
I'll do a second.
Calling a vote,
Holman's aye.
Demelia, aye.
Aye, Carpenter, aye.
and the chair is aye, the motion carries.
Aye. Ready.
So, aye.
Means I don't have to sign those again. We should get up and run around the table all the time.
Yeah, that was a nightmare. We had to sign every paper copy too.
Yeah,
And
Things are getting
today's
better.
the 16th?
things are looking up.
Good. Yeah, it's the 16th.
So this,
There
just
you
for
go.
the record, the section we need to polish is 5.8 of the zoning bylaw.
I'll just leave this with you guys because they're right in town to pick it up and record it versus me taking it and then having to come all the way up to New Hampshire to grab it. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Just leave it right there. Nate, can you grab it after the meeting? and
Absolutely.
in the office?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that works fine then. Yeah, that was a COVID rule to be able to do that, but it's still,
Okay, all right.
because it was tough when all the meetings were remote.
Yeah.
All right, so moving ahead on the agenda, we have the main event for tonight's meeting, which is the presentation from Niche Engineering about the options for sand pit development.
Yes, thank you, Chris. Good to see you, everyone. My name is Allison Evans. I'm with Niche Engineering. I've been working with Nate and Chris and a whole great crew on the options and setting these zoning options around the sand pit development, or not the development, the sand pit project site. So today we just want to go into kind of what the goals of this study were, what the main conditions and constraints on the site we're seeing, and some options for future development scenarios, and zoning changes that would support those if that were the direction chosen. So just a brief overview on the project. We've been working with the town since the spring. We went out to the site, looked at the existing conditions. We did a study of other sand pit developments. We looked at the regulations around the site. We looked at the existing conditions. We looked at soil data, everything related to what would affect future development. We then moved into kind of a visioning, determining what the goals of these recommendations would be. We had a public meeting. There was a public survey. We thank everyone who came out for that. Then we moved into scenario testing, developing what these three options could potentially look like. And eventually what the output of this would be will be some guidance on potential zoning updates that could happen that would bring those scenarios we discussed to light. So again, reasons for doing this are to establish a collaborative vision, bring everyone in, have some conversations, engage the stakeholders, engage the landowners, engage the town, engage the public on what does Hubbardston need, what could this site be, how could it help serve the future goals of the town. and how we could divide any potential future development intentionally. It doesn't, I know I don't need to tell you all, but there are regulations on the site that do allow things to be built. And those might not always fit what the town would like. So you'll hear the word zoning overlay tossed about. It's one option for altering the zoning of this site. They're typically used when there's a site with really unique needs or geographic areas where we want to expand on the regulations or further define the regulations for the underlying zoning districts that may be working elsewhere in the town but might not work for a particular area. So in Hubbardston in particular, the currently available commercial districts are one very restricted to one area of the town. There are limitations with them and they might not be suited for this area or the current development desires around the site based on what we heard from the public. It's also pretty far away from any existing commercial zoning in the town. So just a review, I know you all are well versed in what is allowed within your zoning districts, but the entire site is within the residential agricultural use zoning district. These are some look at the uses permitted by right or by special permit. And this is kind of a mock-up of what the current dimensional requirements would allow on this site. It's a 80,000 square foot parcel minimum. We have the 200 square foot frontages. I believe it's a 25% lot coverage, 75 foot setback. So it would continue to create maybe, if these were applied, maybe a more sprawling development that wouldn't reflect kind of what we heard from the public earlier on. And just another look at what we're working with on the site. It's about around 600 acres, entirely zoned residential agricultural. Right now there are 10 different owners, including 3 public owners, the town of Hubbardston, the town of Gardner, and a state parcel. That's that one in the dark green hatch. That's Article 97 conservation land, probably won't be touched at all in the future. There's no existing water or sewer access. There's frequent public safety issues, people trespassing on the site, using it for dirt biking or what have you. It is a known, environmental asset to the town. A large portion is an aquifer and covered by the wellhead protection area. There are scattered wetlands and vernal pools throughout the site. Those parcels south of Pitcherville Road those are town owned. Those are primarily wetlands. This map is a jumble of regulations, and that's kind of how development would look on the site. I think one thing to take from this map is that a lot of the site is protected anyway, between the state conservation land, the known wetlands, the buffers around the brook and the vernal pools and the wetlands. We looked at it, and it's over 200 acres that would already be not restricted through larger state and federal regulations. So with environmental protection being a big priority, we wanted to look at that. And of course the town already has the Aquifer Favorability Protection District that would align with that pink area, which does include a lot of restrictions on how development would interact with the site. There's already been, to look at how it's been talked about in previous plans, the town's master plan identified a shortage of developable unconstrained land zoned for industry and business within the town. A very small percentage is commercial or industrial land, and we do know people like the rural character of the town. That's a very small percentage, and if they ever wanted more, there's not really many places for a user to go. Current zoning standards require large parcels, encourage sprawl. That was something that was reflected in the master plan. It discussed a public survey that mentioned the site. People were favorable towards a less intensive development, solar use, open space. And in the town's open space plan a few years prior, it does describe the site's role in aquifer protection. It encourages conservation and reclamation efforts towards the site. It does not identify the site as a land protection priority area, but that it did others throughout the town. Something that we looked at during the study was Mass Economics Large Site Demand and Capacity Report. This was a statewide study that looked at the availability of 100 plus acre sites that would be designated for non-retail commercial economic development. Not saying that's exactly what this would be, but it is quite interesting that this site is kind of aligned with what this study is talking about. There's not many of these available in the state. A lot of them lack sufficient power or water infrastructure to meet the needs of employers. This list on the right is what it identifies as the top 5 impediments to this kind of development. Lack of acreage, lack of infrastructure, difficult permitting, development costs are high, and it is difficult to change zoning for commercial uses. The 2 lines with asterisks, permitting is too difficult and it's difficult to change zoning, are kind of what we're talking about now. So just to see how that could align with that study. Looking at other gravel pit development precedents, because these are found around Massachusetts and Westford. About 20 years ago, this Stony Brook development was developed for 51 units of affordable housing in conjunction with a new middle school and recreational fields. And in Sutton, the Unified Parkway Project, it's a very large site, similar to the scale of this, over 440 acres. Last we looked, zoned for office, light industrial, and residential uses. The phase 1 has been approved, some very large warehouses, and construction began in 2022. These plans were created for this area to develop those 3 parcels with warehouse and distribution type facilities. What we heard from, I'm sorry?
I'm online.
It's Alec, he's had his hand up the whole time.
Oh, okay.
And feel free to jump in.
Alec, do you have your hand up on purpose?
No, I raised it earlier this evening, and for some reason it won't come down.
Fair enough.
I hope it's not getting tired.
So we did run a survey feedback for about 3 weeks prior and a week or 2 after the public meeting to try to capture public sentiment around the site. That we can give you the full feedback. I know Chris and Nate will have access to it. We wanted to pull a couple of questions just to guide our discussion tonight.
Everybody has it in their packet.
Oh, beautiful.
I will make this whole presentation publicly available tomorrow as well.
Oh, right, love it. So the first question asked about priorities for future development on the site. Of course, protection of rural character came through very strongly, as did environmental protection. People were next open to the idea of community amenities. And then after those 3, I'll say quieter uses, came tax revenue and economic development, traffic and road safety to be considered, services and retail and housing. So I do think it's interesting that, it's very natural for the public to be interested in rural character and environmental protection. But after those came tax revenue and economic development, which could be assets for the entire town. We asked a series of questions about people's concerns about future development and sorted the feedback into 3 categories. Again, there was high concern for environmental disruption, impacts on water and stormwater, and change in character. Some concern about traffic, demand on schools and emergency services and noise, and less concern for impact on utilities and infrastructure. We also hosted a public meeting at the senior center. We had some really great discussions. What came through from that meeting were, again, the environmental priorities of the attendees. We talked a lot about the Aquifer Overlay District and how that would interact with any future use of the site. We talked about community character, and there was a split interest between new commercial development and preservation for conservation. And again, this is a massive site. I think it must be noted, it would be unlikely that 500 acres of commercial development would be either feasible or economically viable. Future uses of the site, people were in agreement about minimizing impacts, and we talked specifically about some more low-intensity uses, I'll call them, solar, warehouses, sports fields. Discussion of tiny homes and housing availability within the town did come up. And of course, some discussion about services and the cost of housing and commercial uses. And we did discuss some of the limits of infrastructure. Right now, of course, there's no public water or sewer on the site, but there is, of course, an aquifer beneath it. And, you know, concerns about if there were an extension of water and sewer, what that would entail for the surrounding neighbors and cost to the town. So, bringing all that together, the existing conditions, what we heard from the town, what we did hear from meeting with landowners and other stakeholders, we came up with we came up with some guiding priorities for future uses of the site and potential scenarios of what that could look like. For our priorities, sorry, this is small text here, preserving environmental assets, flexibility for future development, aligning development pattern with Hubbardston's character and goals, introducing housing options with an eye towards seniors and new homeowners, directing traffic towards Gardner Road. We heard a lot about you know, keeping Pitcherville relatively untouched, except for maybe as emergency access, and addressing limiting factors from base zoning as it identified in the previous town master plan. And fortunately for us, there are zoning tools that could address all these priorities. We can introduce conservation incentives. We can allow for a mix of uses or a larger variety of uses. There are options, you know, when we want to protect the character and minimize impacts. There are buffer standards, maybe some architectural standards, some very careful consideration of uses. Noise and lighting standards could be used as well. You know, we can allow for many housing typologies and kind of address dimensional requirements that would render some of them not feasible currently. We can introduce standards for road access, or we could update, like I said, dimensional standards. So these are all, you know, tools in our toolkit for zoning updates going forward. So the way we decided to approach this project was to introduce different subzones, you can call them subzones, character areas, throughout the site to kind of address the different qualities of different areas of the site. We encouraging different things near Gardner Road versus that, you know, northwest corner that would probably be rather quiet in the future. So this first one, our green one, you'll see this most often. We called it enhanced residential agriculture. This is essentially just polishing up what the base zoning district allows. We see it for low density residential, agricultural activities, agritourism. We know there's already some of that in the town. You know, encouraging solar or municipal uses, you know, keeping large lots with some changes and recreational opportunities, and conservation-sensitive development patterns. Potential updates for this enhanced agri-residential, and again, we just are introducing a wider spectrum of potential of possibilities. None of this is written in stone. Everything's in the discussion phase right now. But you know, some changes in this area would be, you know, how do we talk about accessory uses to support agriculture and senior housing complexes? How do we incentivize conservation? Maybe looking at single family lot size, especially when we did hear a lot from the public about affordability, but keeping it within where they can still be on their own septic. Keeping, you know, how could we alter those frontages if those single family standards were changed? You know, I'm sure the frontages of the lot lines are something that our 200 feet is quite something. You know, looking at that front setback, you know, if we brought the buildings ever so slightly closer to the street, how could that, you know, protect what's at the back of the site? Keeping that environmental protection on the front of our minds. Open space standards, right now it's measured as in within the setback, so how could we maybe look at that as a portion of total development? We looked at your subdivision code and it's open space, and as part of a whole development, we saw it as language that said the board can require. Maybe we could codify that, and please correct me if I read that wrong. And also looking at how primary access, could be directed more towards Gardner Road. And I can go through all three of these and we can talk about how they can be applied throughout the site, and then we can absolutely go back and talk about any of these details. But then one level of intensity up maybe from that residential agricultural, we talked about it as a neighborhood subzone, our yellow subzone. We see this as more of a village style, small scale but diverse development. Small scale retail, houses with a slightly denser pattern, local services, your medical offices, your hair salons, some offices, restaurants, retail on a small scale, not a BJ's, not a Costco, but something in a smaller format that would be sensitive towards the current context. How we could address that within what the code allows. That would be introducing more standards allowed within the district, and that is further discussion of what would be by right versus special permit. You do have what we noted when we were looking at the special permit standards for the town is they do talk about and discuss a lot of the sensitive topics that came up during the public engagement. People are worried about fiscal impact or traffic impact or environmental impact, and you have a really, I'm sure you do it here, not in this very room, but as a planning board, it's a very thorough review and when a special permit comes up, and I think that's something that's a really strong tool that you already have in your toolbox that can then be applied to future development on the site. So introducing a variety of uses that would be allowed here. Again, looking at lot size and frontage and setbacks, how it could we buffer commercial uses from residential uses, how could we screen them, and again, keeping an idea towards conservation and open space incentives. How could we introduce parking standards that are not sprawling, in looking at users are only building what they really need and not, paving more of this area than they absolutely have to. And again, looking at primary access towards Gardner Road and how we are talking about primary buildings to encourage more of that village style pattern of development. And then we're getting in our third subzone is our employment subzone, again, intended for employment generating uses, light industrial business, warehousing, large format retail with design standards, ensuring regional access, road access, and buffering from sensitive areas and compatibility with rural character. Something that came up a lot during these conversations we've been having, and I'm kicking myself for not including this slide, but how close this site is. It's less than 2 miles from that emerging commercial area in Gardner, near that Route 2 intersection. It's near freight rail, it's near the airport, it's plane, trains, and automobiles can all get to this site, so there is a school of thought where it could be good for employment or large commercial uses. Looking at these and how we could alter zoning standards, it would be introducing these uses as allowed through most likely special permit for uses over 50,000 square feet or warehouses or light manufacturing and research spaces. Introducing, pretty strong buffering and setback requirements to minimize impact on residential neighbors. And talking about noise standards with strict decibels, screening for these large uses from, their neighbors, and again, keeping those themes of primary access, conservation and open space incentives, and reasonable parking regulations, so that again we're not building out more of these sites than we need to. So how would we apply these 3 scenarios? This was our conservation focused scenario. We will say this one was probably, what we based on a lot of the public desire for environmental protection and conservation that we heard throughout the project. So it applies that residential agricultural, all the sites, basically just polishing up what's allowed right now. But then there is that area towards Gardner Road where we could introduce that neighborhood village style development. This one keeps it essentially within that line of the brook. That's why this yellow area was chosen, because crossing that brook creates a big expense and then a need for probably more build out to offset that. So that was our thought process for keeping this concentrated towards Gardner Road. You know, and where there is already access to the site from the road, you know, it could be brought up in the north and that other extraction area up north. But essentially this is just a polishing of the whole site with a little bit of opening it up along Gardner Road. Scenario B is more employment focused, responding to those identified gaps in the town of not having a lot of area for commercial or industrial development, maybe playing into that large site study that we saw from Mass Econ. But so it introduces that purple area, that employment subzone, more towards Gardner Road, but here we are crossing the brook, and that would require a bridge and opening up that center of the site. So our reasoning behind where we applied the purple areas were parcels with access to Gardner Road or direct access from the across that bridge. And I think we did stop at you know, where the solar farm is presently. We didn't really involve them a lot in what we were imagining. And then we applied that small yellow area along Pitcherville Road just to address that identified desire for residential. We would not advocate for putting non-commercial, non-residential uses along Pitcherville Road, but potentially if we're having a stronger build out of the site, you know, if we're taking a stronger stance towards opening up more of the site, maybe some of that housing need could be brought down towards Pitcherville Road. And one more thing about where we chose in the center of the site to apply that purple, that was really where there's not a lot of tree cover currently, because you know, something that was discussed was keeping habitat intact. So that between where the town owns, where the solar field is, and where the trees are, that's where we kept that purple area. So, you know, one we showed you was very conservation focused, and one was very employment and maybe slightly more intense focused. And then our scenario C is kind of maybe our preferred option right now. It's a marriage of the two. It allows that neighborhood village style development along Gardner Road and then in the middle where we already have clearing. It has the advantage of keeping things mostly away from Pitcherville Road, besides what we would call emergency or secondary access, but nothing right along that road. And so it balances that appetite for conservation with sensitive development. And we can absolutely come back to these. I just wanted to, before we wrap up, I have a few more slides. One is that we looked into popular zoning incentive tools throughout the town, so that the town could figure out how to write updates that would help get everybody what they want. So density bonuses, and this is where we really think that the conservation incentives would look like: reduced parking requirements, flexible design requirements in exchange for perhaps more open space or protected areas, or maybe even introducing something like to offset community spaces. We talk about how looking at how we are phasing development and how that could maybe benefit property owners in a way that makes everything a bit more staggered for the town to ease the impact of what we see built out. Or we can even look at things like a streamlined permitting process for certain uses that are maybe more in the interests of the town. And finally, we do realize that we're not just looking at the residential agricultural district. There is an entire aquifer protection district on this site, on most of it, not all of it. And it has certain standards that would impact whatever happens in the future on the site. somewhat of a legal question, how the hierarchy of multiple overlays would interact on the site. Generally, things are written for, more restrictive winds, but there are options for directly having those in conversation. I think I noted on a few of the slides earlier, that 1 acre minimum lot size is actually in conflict with what the AFPD allows, but the SRD does set a precedent for going against that. But we do see that it has strict standards. It prohibits multifamily development, which is why we haven't talked about the MBTA Communities Act much during this presentation. It's something that has also come up during the conversations we've had, but the fact that the Aquifer Protection District does not allow for multifamily development kind of keeps a lot of the site from being used to address that requirement should it come through via a train stop nearby. That overlay, the existing overlay, also it requires large lot sizes. It has strict regulations regarding lot coverage and impervious surfaces, and has some standards towards septic and stormwater treatment as well. So those are further details that would be ironed out through additional conversation should any zoning updates come to pass. So our next steps, as we have discussed with Nate and Chris and the town, we tonight will have a discussion about everything we've presented and hopefully arrive to a preferred scenario. And then we will be drawing up language that could support what we've talked about. That doesn't mean anything is happening, and and I know everyone here in this room knows that, but just a note that should any bylaw updates be progressed, there is extensive review by other boards and commissions and public hearings. So this is purely just one conversation in what would be a much larger process. And with that, you're probably tired of listening to me, and I would love to discuss what we've just talked about.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for all the work that's gone on this. So, for the benefit of the board, I've been involved with the advisory committee tonight that's been working alongside the engineering firm to come up with some of the scenarios that we're here to talk about. So, pretty deliberately, there's a range of scenarios that have been put on the table for the board for discussion. And ultimately, what we're here tonight to approach the board as a stakeholder to see what the board and the individual members think, because we have sent out the public survey. We got back 179 responses, which isn't great, but it's not bad. And then we had the public meeting session, but that was a session at the senior center, and I don't know that it necessarily represents a great demographic mix of all population groups in the town. So we're all here to have an additional discussion ourselves as a stakeholder group and throw what our thoughts are into this project for them to be considered and what comes out for the final recommendation. So with that, I'd like to open up to the board for questions. I'm looking for you guys to start off. I've been looking at this for months, so the first question's not going to come from me.
All right, I'll take a stab. What's the driver behind considering one overlay zone for the whole 600 acres? I mean, what the scenarios you outlined actually carve it up.
So I can actually
Right?
field that question. So it ultimately, this started as a conversation as an overlay zone, because at one point the idea was brought up by a particularly clever engineer that worked with the town that, hey, this might be something that makes sense as an overlay zone. And that now is just kind of stuck with it. It doesn't have to be an overlay. It could be a change to the underlying zoning, which is something that was brought up quite a bit in the public discussion session. Why don't you just change Article 4? So it doesn't have to be an overlay, but it's not a bad use of an overlay if it was done that way.
Is there a way to set up this overlay, as you say, that will actually stop people from doing the wrong thing with the overlays? Because I know those people coming in showing a lot of concern about that. saying it's not the right way to do it.
Well, there's certainly, and I can let let the professionals talk about this, particularly Alec or Allison. There's certainly been an evolution in how overlays get used over the last 20 years that I would let some of our learned colleagues comment on. I don't know if you'd like to take that.
Yeah, where we're seeing them applied is generally on two ends of a spectrum, one to protect areas and one to encourage development. This one is unique in that it would attempt to do both, and I think that answers the chopping it up question, is that we recognize that it's a large site, it has entirely different needs near Gardner Road and near the edge, and near the western edge, so that we think an overlay would really allow this to, one, be done in a sensitive way, and two, it would allow, again, it's another tool in the town's toolbox that perhaps it could be applied elsewhere. So it's really, could be the start of a conversation.
And I don't know, Alec, if you have anything to add to that?
As the board's considering options moving forward too, I'll just speak to the fact that overlay districts do tend to be easier to pass at a town meeting, as they don't alter the underlying zoning unless it's a restrictive overlay. In this case, it would not be a restrictive overlay. So you would not face the typical pushback of a zoning change where residents would be asking you, would this throw my property out of conformance? In this case, there's no risk of properties becoming non-conforming. An overlay zone in this case would simply give a second set of zoning options.
Can an overlay zone require more stringent criteria for development than the underlying zone? Can an overlay zone have cluster housing on top of a single-family residential zone of 80,000 square foot lots? Did I say that right?
Yeah.
I think you did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, so Alec and I can't look at each other right now, so he doesn't know.
Or does that get,
Yeah.
or does it get challenged in court and do you end up fighting for years?
Yes, my interpretation and what we've studied throughout the course of this process would be yes. I think if we wrote specific language about how it were to interact, one, with the base language, two, with the existing overlay, and three, where it would be more restrictive versus more flexible. So.
Not sure I heard the answer. Was the answer yes?
Yes.
It could be
Yes,
more restrictive?
It could be more
Okay.
restrictive, yes.
Well, cutting to the chase, it seems like if you look at your aquifer map, your hydrogeologic map, you see that everything on the west side of Hubbardston Brook is really well suited for a mix of housing of some type and conservation of some type, and recreation perhaps. Whereas that which is on 68 on Gardner Road is well suited for either mixed or employment-based, right? And employment-based may have a bad reputation, but in fact, if it's the kind of employment base that comes and goes at specific hours, it isn't like a steady stream of traffic all day, it might be okay for those who are concerned about, the traffic implications.
I have had a few people ask me if we did something like this and we did the retail, let's say,
Yeah.
on the Gardner Road side, would there be any plans to enlarge the road to compensate for the traffic that it would increase? And I said, I don't know. I wonder if one of our residents of Garden Road would also comment on that too. Because you have a lot of
Sure.
traffic in Garden Road.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's only crazy on Sundays, so other than that, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with it, Nate, I know when those projects were done not that long ago for 68 in that section there, do you have you seen anything about what the traffic planning was done for the way the road is currently set up?
It's a couple of years old, and I want to say the number 6,000 is sticking in my head for some reason, mostly because a member of the select board has said it a couple of times, but at this point, that was pre-COVID, and there would be some value in doing another
Yeah.
traffic study over there. A lot of what really opened this up was the Marinelli lot being sold to a person that created a contiguous lot from Gardner Road all the way through and opened up a lot of possibility for what used to be landlocked. And to be completely honest, the overlay was a little bit my fault. I didn't think we were gonna get this grant. I kind of threw a couple of things out there, and then when money comes, you have to do the project. So it is a opportunity from my office, at least, just to look at ways to present opportunities to the town of Hubbardston. If they choose to go one way, that's politics, and nowhere in the name town administrator does it say political administrator. So I just want to create opportunity to allow the residents and the landowners and the people that call Hubbardston home to do what is best for their community.
All right, so I guess to answer my question was, no, we haven't seen a reliable. what the road
Not
is.
recent.
Okay.
Like, so 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Okay, so yeah, that's something that we could certainly look at, and we would want to look at as a process advanced. Because when that was done, there was planning for some kind of growth over time on it. I don't know what it is.
I can pull that data
Yeah.
from back then just for value's sake, but I do think it's getting older at this point.
Yeah, and we're having a conversation tonight. We're not making a final decision on
Right,
anything.
right.
So there's a lot of process to run through here, where we're just in a place where we need to provide some feedback on where it's at and where we think it should go. And if we ultimately have a model or models that we think we prefer, or whether what we prefer is some kind of smushed together composite of two different models, so.
Yes, that's also an option. I wanted to bring up that.
Yeah. So what other questions and comments from the board?
I do agree with, I hope I'm not stepping on anybody else here. Back in the day of hauling gravel out of Pitcherville Road, out of the pits, really destroyed the lives of the people living on that road with the amount of traffic and noise and the destruction of the road. And being on the police department, I saw a lot of the complaints and I heard all that. I would say totally we keep any and all traffic off Pitcherville Road through our thought process of doing this, just to keep that fair, because that's a narrow little road. Because that became a problem many times.
I'm curious what the board's feeling is about single-family homes off of Pitchville versus cluster homes and protecting the remaining as open space.
I think it's important.
Affordable homes, hopefully.
Right.
And a lot of people express that opinion too. There's, our kids that grow up here have no place to go to live there at all around this area because there are no homes. Is that something we can is that something we can work into this? And I don't know, but to make something affordable.
Because part of my concern from listening to some of the public comments from the public comment session was that there was this really big focus on doing things that aren't people. And like, that's not how you make a community. Like, a solar farm is a quiet neighbor, but is it a good neighbor? Like, does it actively, other than the power it generates, does it contribute to the quality of life in the community we have here? Or is that just something that's being suggested because I'm here now, so the door's closed behind me, so the rest of you, good luck? Like, that's something that becomes a concern to me. And to the idea that we should always look away from housing because housing increases service costs. Yeah, to some degree that's true, but we're also in a unique position because of how much of this town is owned by the state. So 43% of this town is under total constraints, part of the watershed, part of the state forest. So we're in a place where we're running a whole town off of what at maximum development could only ever be half a town. So the idea that, well, adding more housing in any way, shape, or form is bad for the budget isn't true, because there's also economy of scale that gets factored in. And there were some numbers that were thrown out at that meeting that were like, oh, well, if you do this, the expense ratio is this. If you do this, that's an oversimplification because it doesn't look at the economy of scale number. And having more people makes some basic services more affordable, like fire and police, whereas having to pay for it off of half of a town is certainly more challenging. So I think in the long run, we have to think about those things too, and that, yeah, the idea of, well, just move away from housing because it's automatically cheaper in the long run isn't always the most accurate approach, and it doesn't engage in community building.
When I got elected to be on the planning board, the thing at the forefront, all of that was they wanted business in town to help lower the tax rate. So I think that's an important part of this too, because if we can fit that in and make it all work and have the businesses, like the place over right on Gardner by the 99, something, you know, on that aspect, like was in the presentation, that's a good way to do it. And again, you're gonna have less travel at night, and things like that. So, and I think people want that.
Right, so let's stay on that particular frame on the commercial side of it, so that, I mean, we can talk about this literally all night. This is the most exciting thing that's come up since I've been on the board. But just to have a little bit of a directed conversation here, let's limit it for a few minutes just to what we think about the appropriateness of commercial uses. So I guess looking at comparing and contrasting options B and C.
Yeah, I like to see.
I could quickly put them next to each
Yeah.
other if you don't mind.
Yeah, that would be great.
It's also worth noting that the town has applied for some grants to completely overhaul the zoning, which could rope this into a different type of situation if those grants were ever awarded. So,
Too bad we didn't have the old zoning when all of Gardner Road was commercial.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
You know?
So yeah, let's talk about comparing those two proposals. What do people like about employment focused versus what do people like about neighborhood focused?
I think we need a mix. I think we do need more housing, and we could use some commercial stuff. That's why I'm leaning more towards C rather than just the employment, because that doesn't really offer a lot of housing solutions. It's just businesses. So I think we need a mix.
Yeah.
What would people, and this is not in any of the scenarios that are presented, we're just asking for discussion purposes. What if scenario B contained within it a smaller area, either towards 68 or isolated in some other place, that was more along the lines with employment focused, but still contained the balance of the neighborhood focused? I don't know if that's...
Adding some purple.
Yeah, adding some
along
purple.
68.
I don't even know if it's doable because of all the stuff that goes in the background. I'm just asking from a conversation purpose.
And something to note is that wherever the purple is, there's still the underlining zoning district, so there's would be some housing available. How they interact, I think, would be a different conversation, and the market will guide, but just a note.
and at the end of the day, you also have to remember whatever color we color it right now, if the landowner doesn't want to do it, that's a hard sell.
Right.
So
Yeah, I thought all the landowners wanted to do this.
that's not necessarily the case. We have not spoken to all of the landowners. We have
Okay.
not tried to speak to all of the landowners. There is a relative of a landowner that I've run into lately that had no clue this was going on.
Okay.
So that's really the question. I guess to break the question down even smaller, are there parts of the employment-focused plan that aren't objectionable or that could be used as as part of the neighborhood focus? Or is the idea of that kind of more intense use on any part of this area something that we don't want to investigate?
Well, the northerly portion of that yellow area up there would be the most logical place to put something larger. You know, let's just, for the sake of argument, if it was a Demoulas or some other, other type of retail. And the lower yellow section is more neighborhood, small scale.
Yeah, keep it separated.
That might be possible.
It's also worth noting that the more Gardner develops that one area, the more something like this is going to become attractive on a state level. And that was a little bit of the play behind here too, was to get Hubbardston ahead of anyone on a large scale saying, oh, we're gonna do this and that's it. So that we really just wanna make sure that the opportunities are presented to do good.
Right.
So, reading the room, it seems like there aren't a lot of employment-focused uses that seem attractive to the board. Is that a fair statement?
See, from a personal perspective, that circled purple section is directly behind my house. Like, I would see it. So
The
that,
northerly one? I'm sorry.
yes, where she circled it in red.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Literally, that is directly
Yeah, you
behind
can
my
see it
house.
from your house.
So, you put a big Demoulas in there, that directly affects me. I don't want to be selfish, but that's my thought process there, is when you're thinking about this,
Yeah.
the people who live near these zones will absolutely be affected. So I would need to think about that a little bit more if I really wanted a big supermarket directly behind my house.
Oh, but the property though.
Yeah, well, I'm not selling anytime soon with these interest rates.
Yeah, well, and that's really the balancing act with this whole thing. There's a lot to think about because we're one voice in it. I mean,
Right.
there's the abutters, there's
Right.
the people who actually have to vote on this. But we're certainly in a place where we need to shepherd the discussion. But
Our discussion here is leading to a recommendation that culminates in a zoning proposal, right?
Yes.
We're not trying to develop a site plan for somebody because that's the job of the owner.
yeah,
Correct,
Right?
and that's why this is done in such broad strokes here.
Yeah.
It was tempting even for us, because we love to play planner. It was to get into the weeds a bit more, but we kept this at a very high level for
Right.
that reason.
Unless we get into spot zoning, which I'm not a fan of.
well,
But we shouldn't carve it up too much, right?
yeah, well, and ultimately, that's true. But ultimately, that's a valid point there because you zone for what you want to see people build in the next 15 to 20 years. Like, just because you zone it, it doesn't mean
Yeah.
somebody's going to do it.
Right.
So,
Right.
Certainly not anytime soon.
yeah, and even though somebody who's currently looking at investing in properties there, they could look at what we put on the table and be like, well, that doesn't work for me, peace, I'm out, and it's back on the market. So,
Right.
we plan for what we think is in the best interest of the town in the long run. So, but it is sounding like there aren't a lot of scenario B options that are particularly attractive to the board. Because there aren't really a lot of good ways to carve it up in kind of a compromising way. And why I'd suggested kind of the middle eastern part was because it was just clean, established access to 68 through contiguous
Yeah.
parcels,
Yep.
which was why I was looking at it for that central east area.
Yeah.
And that the access out to there is big enough to put in a full-size road.
Right.
So that was why I'd looked, it was like, well, maybe that's an area where an employment-focused zone could work, or an employment-focused area.
I wouldn't say I'm outright opposed to it,
Mhm.
The devil is that if you open up that possibility, the owner of that property is going to build whatever's most profitable.
Yeah, that's certainly what the economics are.
Which, if our output is a zoning proposal, I would be reluctant to want to support something there that's going to create large traffic and, infrastructure requirements we can't meet, which is sewers and waters and,
We
Well-
always talked over the years that if we did anything up on the end of town, we would try to get in on Gardner, on that end.
Yeah,
So that was an incredibly unpopular thought process
Yeah,
when
geez,
I
yeah,
at least
shot
brought
that
it
down.
up, and there
It's been talked
were,
about many times.
there are a couple of kind of heavy hitters involved on that side, and I've even had a conversation with the mayor of Gardner about how that could be a possibility, but with the red tape and rules and regulations that are implemented upon people that have water pipes go by their house, it would be incredibly
Yeah.
unpopular.
Yeah.
and I think I heard that their current treatment plant was at near max,
Yeah.
and that it would require some huge capital investment.
They also have issues with the water being too basic sometimes.
And that's what, yeah,
Yeah.
Katie
So-
mentioned that.
So it is worth noting that since the last time this area was really looked at with any level of intensity, since that time, there have been dramatic improvements on what can be done with the local package plant, private wells, all that. The technology is far better than it was when this was originally set up. Yeah.
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
William Murray, Peelville Road.
Yep.
I don't agree with the statement that residences don't cost the town, or residents cost the town money. If you have 3 more kids in a house, we pay more for a child, but that's my opinion. I'm not basing it on fact. I agree with everything that you've said. Nothing that the board has said is incorrect, but if you build it, they will come is kind of what the thought process here is being proposed, or if you allow it, they will come. No, they won't. There's sewer and water on the other side of the city line. That's why you have a Walmart supercenter. If I'm developing a BJ's, I'm not gonna put a package plant. I'm gonna go to the empty space on the other side of the line and tap into municipal sewer and water. The bottom line is, we're not eligible both from access to Route 2, highway traffic, or anything for a big box anything. They're not coming to Hubbardston because we don't have connectivity, we don't have the traffic flow, we're off of Route 2 too far. So it's my personal opinion that you need to start chasing these smaller, whatever development types that you want. Small mechanic shops or transient electricians, those kind of things, or whatever, because that generates a tax base. I absolutely do agree that the lower portions of the site, the southwest corners, or anything off of Pitcherville should be residential. It is residential. And it's got a lot of various issues. This is one of the very few places, this portion of town is one of the very few places in town that's glacial outwash, sand and gravel. You go south of here, where we are right now, the septic system's on a hill. It's a helicopter landing pad because this is what's known as a silt loam. It's one of the worst soils that you can get other than pure clay to put a septic system on. So this is the most developable property in the town, and still it's not really highly sought after because of connectivity. The rail is across from Gardner Road. Getting a rail spur that isn't already there is probably worse than trying to get the city of Gardner to extend utilities into Hubbardston, because that takes almost an act of God. I've done it before. So my personal opinion is Hubbardston desperately needs anything that will increase the commercial tax base, that will not increase the load on the other parts of our town, so that our amazing town administrator, who doesn't play politics, can have more money to do more amazing things. So that brook is endangered species habitat. The whole area is habitat for a whole lot of other animals, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that more of this area will be mapped for endangered species in the near future. So yeah, it's all there. You got sand and gravel, which is great for development, but we don't have connectivity to good roads. You don't have a public water supply, and a public water supply requires a well, a protective radius where it's about 5 acres of land where you can do nothing in it. So if we want to do any kind of commercial development, like a restaurant, you gotta have 5 acres of land that you can't even put a driveway in, you can't put parking in, you can't put a building. So all of these things kind of layer upon layer upon layer out there. But, you know, it's good for a step.
Right, thank you. And also, just for the benefit of the public, Mr. Murray also serves as the town engineer when we have special permit projects come up, and has previously examined this property at the commission of the planning board before.
And I'm
So-
a resident right now.
Yeah, but is currently speaking as a resident, but just to cite to his basis of knowledge on this. And although not here as an expert tonight, has previously been here as an expert on this topic. So, what other guidance are you looking for from the planning board?
Which scenario seems most palatable to you, and if it is a combination, and of course, that could be, it sounds like scenario C would be the one that we're leaning most towards. I would, in that case, I will bring up, so we don't even need to talk about purple. The biggest changes would come in anything that falls under this yellow district. And this is not an exhaustive list of zoning points that would be written up, but if there's anything here that stands out to you as great or terrible or needs to be massaged a bit more, I would love some guidance on that going forward. And I know these are written very generally, but they're really a launching point for conversation.
Okay, so to just break this up into smaller manageable pieces, it does sound like the conversation has been scenario C focused.
For the commercial aspects of the site.
Yeah,
We haven't yet talked about Pitcherville Road access.
yeah. There's a lot
Housing.
of there's a lot of details, but just to simplify and guide the conversation, essentially the aspects of scenario B have been taken off the table, and from the sentiment of the board, it also sounds like we'd like to see a little more commercial use than is in scenario A. So it looks like scenario C is the starting point, not the ending point, but the starting point.
And we could talk about which parcels it is actually applied to. There's reasoning behind all of this, especially in the northern portion. There would be, the brook kind of stops us up there. We don't really foresee this being a 2-bridge development. And then this being the state land kind of halts our northern expansion as well. So that's why there's this, it's contained to here and here. And particularly here, again, there's that endangered species area that was mentioned earlier. We have wetland here, solar fields here, and this is more forested. So just, that's a little bit more of the logic of why these colors were applied where they were, but that's also something that could be altered. And that doesn't have to be decided right now, but just to point that out.
Well, I read our open space, our zoning regulations as they are today, and I don't like them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're so restrictive, you might as well build single-family homes.
It has been a long-standing recommendation from multiple professionals who have served the board since I've been around that we should take a good hard look at that.
Yeah.
But each year when we do our project planning for the year, where we pick what projects we're going to work on, it always just barely misses the cut, because there's always something that happens to be an emergency at the time. So it always falls on being that 4th or 5th priority instead of being in the top 3, which is the stuff we get through. We're probably just at the point where we just need to do that, but
Well, that's why I asked earlier, is an overlay of a open space or a cluster zone going to be on top of a residential as it exists today, something that is feasible? i.e., 2 different overlays, one for the scenario C, and one for, I'll call it senior or affordable housing type. You know,
That's a great point because, senior housing came up and open space, conservation communities came up as well, and you already have these tools available within your zoning code. So that's another layer on top of this. We haven't looked at, as far as everything I know, those would still be allowed. I think our big obstacle here is the Aquifer Protection District. Obstacle is probably too negative of a word. We want to protect the aquifer, but that's going to be the limit we run up against most when we're doing any potential updates. So it's also how those interact.
So the board, you can change the Aquifer Overlay Protection District.
Yeah,
I mean, it predates me, and I've been in town for 35 years. They simply took the outwash soils and they mapped it and said, we're going to protect the future water supply of the town. Can you pull up one of your maps?
Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, and just briefly to also speak to that, that's fallen at like number 8 or 9 when you do the prioritization.
No, I need one of the site maps.
Okay.
Oh, no, that one will do. That one will do.
That's a good one.
This one's cleaner.
I've been in town for a very long time, not as long as a lot of you. This property over here, we own outright, and it was a tax taking, it goes way back. The town at one point wanted to sell it, and I waved my hands and went clapping mad. Because what happens is, this is all wetlands and it's endangered species habitat, but there's a peninsula of land that sticks right out into the middle of the wetlands. And it's not a small peninsula of land, it's a fairly large peninsula of land, which for somebody in my business, I look at it and I go, well, it is the perfect spot for a municipal well. We own the land. It's swamp, except it's got this beautiful uplands that goes right into the center of a swamp, and we know it's sand and gravel. It is, I mean, it could potentially support the center of town, it could potentially support that development. It's that potential of a site. So if you were thinking about changing, please, I'll defend that property as an aquifer overlay forever and ever until we actually get to use it as a well site, because it's almost custom made for it.
Perfect.
And there are grants.
Awesome. All right, so what other specific thoughts are you looking for from the board tonight on this? The discussion, I think, of the specific layouts, I don't think the board's going to be able.
It's a lot to
get to
digest
that
and
tonight,
process,
yeah.
absolutely. Doesn't help being talked at for 30 minutes by me. I think in that case, one thing I did want to point out, and I pointed out, you talked about, okay, if we take the purple off the table, that was the only subzone or anything that would allow for a warehouse, which is something that has come up a lot in this discussion as being maybe a quieter neighbor, and we don't know who it would be or anything, and it would have a large footprint, which is also something to think about. So we don't need answers tonight, but maybe if that were a use that we wanted to not exclude, think about that. I also think personally, I would be interested in what the board's thoughts about single-family lot size are if we took the matter of wastewater treatment off the table. If we didn't have to think about lot size for septic, what is palatable to the board in here? And because that will guide a lot of our dimensional requirements. And again, we don't need an answer tonight, but that's another item on the list that we would be looking for specific guidance on.
Well, I'll chime in. I like the idea of incentives to whoever wants to develop it. That there's a certain bonus provision that goes to affordable housing in any construction of multifamily condominiums or apartment.
I mean, we haven't gotten any 40Bs because there's no point in doing it in Hubbardston. You can build a single-family home on a 2-acre lot relatively cheaply compared to the rest of the world. There's no reason to, there's
Maybe so.
no benefit to it without sewer and water.
An unconnected concern of mine is going too far with the environmental cleanup of Lot 57 Pitcherville without considering development opportunities kind of behind it. Because what would cost the town between $100,000 and $200,000 to take care of would be a couple of scoops for a developer. So that's where you kind of begin to think like, where can we save versus the future? And it's not an option now, but could it be? So it's,
Yeah, and
One final comment? Ron?
sure.
Maybe your consultant can give you a summary of what adjacent towns that we like have for minimum lot size for cluster developments or something like that. So instead of asking them to pick something, maybe we can use a known standard to benchmark against.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be very helpful, because I think the, really what one of the quieter lessons should be from tonight is we're really good at multiple choice. These
Yeah.
essay questions.
Yeah, I
Always
see
pick C.
that.
And we did.
Yeah, that's probably, that's the best way to move this forward in a way that's actionable.
Yeah, if that's something, if that's just, we can basically make like a flyer we can send out.
Yeah, and just give us a couple options for us to look at and discuss, and we can send back responses based upon that. Yeah, because if the ask is just give us a framework, we're gonna bring Alec here and he's gonna spend 2 hours just
Yeah,
trying to work through it with us.
yeah.
And then I'll debate with Alan.
Yeah.
What are the, what towns are the appropriate comps?
We picked those a couple years ago, didn't we?
Yeah, so
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we actually have a planning board approved comparable town list. I couldn't tell you who they are off the top of my head.
I don't remember either, but we did
Yeah.
this. We picked them.
Yeah, there was
Send
actually.
it my way if we.
The list of comparable towns to
Oh,
Hubbardston.
okay.
We
Yeah,
picked
yeah,
that
we did
list.
all
We
that.
did that work.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
Yeah, yeah.
look, there's been an IT transition since then, so we're gonna have to look through our email to try to find it.
Okay.
I think Westminster would be one of them, Princeton. They don't have sewer, they don't have water.
Yeah,
I think Rutland was on it because parts of Rutland don't have sewer or water. And Paxton, they have water. but not sewer.
Templeton?
my financial
Yeah, there's some others
comparables
too.
are likely very similar to planning comparables, so I
Yeah.
can send you
Yeah.
that as well.
Yeah, we can
Water would be
trade.
very beneficial for the center of town.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because, and a lot of this, you know, that, a lot of the dimensional requirements and uses it begs the question of, you know, supplying infrastructure, and that's not totally under the purview of this conversation right now, but it is something to be aware of. What you allow, if you allow something that would require, that would make it more likely that it happens.
Yeah, because you can't go less than 40,000 square feet for a single-family home by state, because you have a septic system and a well, and they consider that to be nitrogen sensitive. So you just can't.
30,000.
40.
Yeah, for 4 bedroom,
It's,
10,000 square feet per bedroom.
yeah, it's 40. But, and if you want to go smaller than that, now you're looking at a shared system and all the other kind of things, and package plants and all the other kind
Yeah.
of things. So
Yeah.
it gets complicated real fast unless you have the opportunities to, if you have town water, that comes off the table.
Yep.
Thank you.
So what other, you'll give us a couple options.
Yes.
You'll
Yeah.
consider what we have tonight. We'll discuss those options at our next meeting.
Yes.
And get back to you with them. Where does that leave us for action items? Anything else we need for tonight?
And, I don't have any for me. I'm looking for, I will make sure that we put together a flyer to demonstrate what lot sizes would look like, and pointing out exactly what he was talking about. what would require different infrastructure. Maybe some precedents for what the non-commercial use would look like. Other than that,
What would it be piling on to ask? Well, what areas would be environmentally set aside
yeah.
as
we-
conservation
we actually
or
have
recreation?
a terribly ugly map I can show you if you're
'Cause I think-
curious about it.
I think that's a big selling point to people in the town, if they can have places for walking or biking or riding horses, and there's some beauty out there that
Yeah.
should be enjoyed.
Right now, it's four-wheelers and motorcycles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not gonna help the
Yeah.
endangered species.
Yeah, there's definitely a map that's in there for it. So I don't want to keep this this going on all night.
Yeah, but we can send that. It's right on the.
But yeah, that data exists.
Good.
All right. Anything else from the board on this? Okay. Otherwise, I think we have some clear action items on this. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank
And
you.
there is a ton of work that has gone into this. They have absolutely earned their grant money under it, and I've been really happy with the work that they've done so far. So, thank you very much for that.
It's been a
thank
great time for us as well. So great to meet you all, and we'll touch base through Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one final point not on this. There was no link on the agenda to the web, to this remote meeting, so I couldn't appear remotely tonight, and I did want to do it that way. So the agenda didn't have any
The
link.
link was placed in the body of because I did find it, but I understand that it was likely difficult to find, and we're working on centralizing Teams locations across the board.
There was no hyperlink. No, I went through the doc.
Noted.
Thank you for that. All right, so we don't have any older business on the agenda, but we do have a very exciting item with number 7. So the select board has had a posting up for an associate member since our previous associate member resigned, who we very much thank for his service on the board. And Nate, can you give us a little bit of an update on how that posting's gone?
The posting for the associate member has been up for about a little over a month at this point, and we did get one applicant. The one applicant is a very friendly face. I think he considers himself a little bit of a sucker, but I am personally interested in working with him again and hope that you guys will nominate him to be brought forward to the select board on Monday evening.
So by rule, we don't actually have any authority to make the appointment. We just give a recommendation on the associate member. And to cut to the punch, the person who put in for it, Mark Kresge.
Okay.
So I think it's obviously open to the board, but I think it'd be pretty awesome to have as an associate member.
Yeah.
Sounds
So-
good to me.
All right, well.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah,
for
would
that?
somebody like to make a motion that we recommend to the select board the appointment of Mark Kresge to be the new associate member for the planning
I will
board?
make that motion.
I'll make a second.
All right, any further discussion? I'm pretty excited about it.
Holman's eye.
Demalia, aye.
Carpenter, aye.
And the chair is aye. The planning board recommends Mark Kresge to the select board for appointment as associate member.
Sounds good.
All right, under matters not reasonably anticipated by chair, and we didn't bring it up because it wasn't going to line up with the meeting, but the Department of Energy Resources, they came to the last MRPC meeting.
DPU, Public Utilities?
DOER, I think it is.
Oh,
I can't remember what it stands for. But they came to the MRPC meeting the first Thursday of the month and talked about how they were going to run a really inclusive process for setting up these proposed regulations for battery energy storage systems and for solar systems. 2 days after doing that, without telling anybody, they posted some public meetings, didn't reach out to us, didn't reach out to MRPC, despite the fact they were holding a meeting in Fitchburg to get stakeholder feedback, and then set a deadline for comments today, with like 2 weeks' notice on the regulation, which I guess they're declaring it an emergency regulation to do it that quickly. I don't know. But MRPC did submit comment on behalf of the towns, and did submit probably all of the things that everybody is thinking about how this process has gone, how getting the towns more involved and actually providing time to comment and publicizing these meetings would have been helpful, and that the regulation probably goes too far to take control out of local hands, because it creates this position called a circuit rider, who essentially becomes an extra judicial judge, who, if the process is not going smoothly, the applicant can complain to. And
Thank you.
their job is to facilitate the process in the way most favorable to push the process forward. So there's certainly problems with how the regulations are structured, but with the time that was given to comment, there was no way for us to do it virtually.
They just wanted
And
to railroad it through.
No
we
comment.
can only speculate.
Well, it is what it is.
But it was very surprising to have the local representative come to an MRPC meeting, talk about how inclusive they were going to be with the towns, and then have all of this stuff roll out with no mention to anybody in the towns. The only reason I knew about it was because a citizen in the community had emailed me about it, and then I was able to take that back to MRPC and be like, what's going on here? Did anybody reach out to anyone? And they were like, no, no one did. So,
Good stuff.
crazy, just
They do
crazy.
Great things.
So there are a couple grants that are on the line and are looking pretty promising, and there'll be more updates about that in the future. But other than that, that's all I had for matters not reasonably anticipated by chair.
Okay.
Anybody have anything that's not on the agenda, or any members of the public for comments? For anybody online with comments?
Only Alec is online.
Okay. All right, so with that, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion to adjourn.
All right, non-debatable, calling a vote.
Woman's eye.
Demalia, aye.
Carpenter, aye.
And the chair is aye. We are adjourned at
18:20.
8:08.